So you thought about going to a gym and the thought of that doesn't sit well with you. You don't fancy going to the gym because you think it's full of meatheads and you think you're going to get a hard time. That's what most people think, and I'm going to break some of those myths down, tell you about gym etiquette and what really goes on, and hopefully by the end you're going to be happy to walk in a gym again.
Come over. Don't fight how you really feel. Come closer to me.
Okay, so gyms can be pretty daunting places for people, and we've all been through that thought process. I remember going into gyms for the first time, and even now, I go into a new gym and I start thinking about what's it going to be like, what are the people going to be like, and I start getting that sort of slightly anxious feeling. And I remember when I first ever went into gyms, that was a really high level of I would say anxiety is a strong word. Some people do get that, but I was certainly quite nervous about what to expect. I was thinking that I would be, laughed at, and people would mock me and snigger at me, that people would make comments and things like that. So I was very concerned, and I can understand why people would think about going to the gym and then just be totally off put. So some of that's to do with, the representation in popular culture, in like the TV, films, social media, and gyms are portrayed as these places populated by sort of massive, angry people that are throwing weights around and that are, really highly competent in everything they do. And if you were to go in there as a newbie, you would be kind of getting in their way and they would laugh at you and you wouldn't be able to pick up heavy weights and they would all think that was funny. And that may be, what happens in films, and very occasionally it might be what happens, in some gyms. But the deal is, overall, that never happens in gyms. I don't think I've ever, in 35 years of training, seen people openly laughing at other people in gyms. I've certainly never heard people say rude things about someone else's exercises or the weights that they're lifting. So let's break down the kind of people that you're going to find in a gym, exactly what that's all about, and that might make you feel a bit more comfortable about going in there. So there are some highly proficient guys in gyms, and the highly proficient guys might look as if they're kind of a bit aggressive, but actually that's not them being kind of moody and aggressive. And I'm sure I'm not saying I'm highly proficient, but I suspect I'm one of those guys that people think are moody and angry and not very happy to be there and not happy to see others. It's because I'm really focused on my workout. I'm focused on what I'm doing, and I don't want to be in there sort of smiling away and giggling to myself and, listening to funny things on a podcast, because that will rob me of my ability to have a really intense workout. So when I'm in there, I'm really focused on being like strong, like almost like a warrior, sort of going in there, getting the stuff done, really hardcore, and getting out again. And I'm not like stopping to have nice little polite chats with people and little giggles about what was on TV last night and stuff. And that's not me being mean. It's just that I've paid a gym subscription. I've got a goal, which is to get really fit, and I'm going to make the most of that. And so once I'm out of the gym, I'm back to normal. I'm like having a laugh, talking to people, no problem at all. But at that specific time in the gym, I'm just ultra focused. And most of the really proficient guys I see, you might mistake that for them being like moody guys, but I guarantee if you go up and talk to them, if you were to go up to those guys, and I've had this before, people have come up to me and they've been really uncomfortable and they said, oh look, there's no one else around, could you just give me some advice, or could you just hold this for me while I get in position? And they're usually quite surprised, because I'm like, yeah, sure buddy, no problem at all. And they're like, oh, I didn't think that guy would be like that. So you might be surprised, and actually the highly proficient guys are normally pretty humble. They're normally really happy to give you any tips or help you out. one of the things that is kind of annoying in gyms, and it's something I don't do, or I don't advocate people do, is giving unsolicited advice. So that's a bit different. You know, if you're asking people for advice, that's fantastic that they're pleased to give it to you. But sometimes, and this doesn't tend to be the proficient guys because they're way too busy to give unsolicited advice, but you get these kind of guys that have been going to the gym for a couple of months. They've just learnt the ropes, they're feeling really like eager, you know, they're really chuffed with themselves, and they're desperate to kind of extol some information on some other people and show off everything they've learnt. And they can be slightly annoying when they sort of going up to people and just randomly saying, hey, you're doing that wrong and you're lifting this wrong, because they've only just learnt themselves most of the time. So those guys can be mildly annoying, but you know, generally you just go, oh, you know, thanks for the advice, dude, and leave them to it. But they're certainly not ill-intentioned. You know, they're generally nice-intentioned guys that are just trying to show off a little bit. And then most of the other gym users are, to be honest, people that are there to lose body fat, for example, or to try and get in shape, or they might be recovering from some sort of injury and they've been told by the doctor to go down the gym. The point being, there's all kinds of people in there, you know, and that's one of the reasons that most gym goers don't judge each other, because if you look at those gym videos where they're kind of mocking people on social media, which I hate those videos, you know, where they say, oh, look at this guy, look what he's doing in the gym. Well, you have no idea what that guy is actually training for. So there might be a guy sort of doing some unusual movement with a really light dumbbell, and you could like take a video of that and mock him and say, oh, what a pointless movement, that's so silly. Well, I don't know if he's got some damage to his shoulder and he's rehabbing. He might have some kind of you know, lifelong disability, and that might be one of the only movements that that guy can actually do, and he's just doing whatever he can to, you know, to build his strength up and help his tendons and joints, etc. Someone could have had any number of things happen to them. They could have been involved in a horrendous car accident and they're going through a bout of recovery process, so they're doing some really light exercises in a gym to try and get back up to scratch. I got injured, you know, I injured myself, compressions in the spine quite severely, nerve impingement. I went from benching 180 kilos overnight to not being able to lift 5 kilos up with one arm like that. So I had to go back to the gym and, you know, mess about with really, really light weights. And I'm sure people were looking at me thinking, you know, what's that guy doing? But actually, that was in my mind. No one was looking at me and thinking, what's that guy doing? Because they're all busy getting on with their business. And if someone was really that interested, I'm sure they would have come and asked me. And we have to kind of get over ourselves a little bit, you know, because when we keep thinking about this stuff of, oh, if I go to the gym, everyone's going to be looking at me. Newsflash. No one's really going to be looking at you. Like, you're not that important to everyone else in the gym. You're really important to you and probably to your family members and your close friends, but no one else in the gym actually cares about you. You know, they're just going to be getting on with their own business. So, you know, think about that. Think about you're pretty insignificant in terms of all the other gym goers. And that sounds kind of harsh, but in a way it's kind of good as well, because that does mean there's no focus on you, no one's concentrating on you. Where that can change slightly, and we do have some control over this, is, you know, if I walk in a gym and I'm wearing, you know, a pair of purple hot pants and knee-high socks and a really tight lycra string vest, then people are going to look at me, right? So I can kind of dictate what reaction I'm going to get when I go to the gym. The same as, like, I go to the gym in like a t-shirt, a pair of cargo pants and some sort of military type boots and a cap. So maybe a couple of people look at my boots or whatever, I don't know. But if I went there in some really outrageous, you know, gregarious bodybuilding clothing, like bright luminous sort of bodybuilding baggy pants and a really stringy racer back little vest and, you know, all that kind of stuff, people are going to look at me, and then I'm maybe going to feel self-conscious. So I've dictated whether people are going to look at me or not. And there's kind of a new movement going around. I think it may be swayed more to females, where there's this kind of attitude of, well, I can wear whatever I want and people shouldn't look at me. Well, newsflash for you guys, people are going to look if you wear like really outrageous stuff. That could be ultra revealing stuff, mega bright colours, you know, like stuff with crazy words on it or whatever. It's human nature. People are going to be curious. People are going to look at something that's a bit unusual, a bit out of the norm. For girls, you know, if you walk in there and you've got like a pair of tight lycra leggings and they're pulled right up your bum and you've got a tiny little bra top on, then there are going to be some guys who are going to look over and think, wow, she looks nice. Now, you can say they're creeps and whatever, but those guys, you know, all men are pretty much hardwired to look at someone else that might be gay, and they might be looking at another man, but they're going to be looking at people to see if they're sexually attractive or not. That's normal life. And if you've got guy friends that say they're not doing that, they're lying to you. So, you know, I've met these like simp guys, these sort of white knight guys that say, I've never looked at a female like that. Well, they are looking at females like that. They're just very good at hiding it, which I actually think is kind of more creepy than the guys that are just like, hey, she's a nice looking girl, and then they get on with their business. But that's unavoidable. You know, like the same as I spent 30 years in nightclubs. When I walked around in really tight tops, lots of old ladies came up to me and went, oh, I like your biceps, and kind of, I knew what I was getting into when I was wearing that clothing. I could have worn a big baggy shirt and they wouldn't have given me any bother at all. Am I going to blame all the old ladies in the world for maybe getting a bit excited? No, I'm just going to, you know, take some responsibility for that. Controversial subject, I realise. So, we're in the gym, we don't know what we're doing. That's where a personal trainer comes in. So I would strongly suggest, if you don't know what you're doing in the gym, go and talk to the personal trainers. They're really handy for like the first 3 or 4 weeks in a gym, because they will guide you through how all the machines work. They will take you through what you should and shouldn't be doing, how not to injure yourself, etc. After that, I would advocate that you actually get on with it yourself, because all they're going to be doing then is standing there giving you a bit of motivation, and you should be able to be your own motivation at that point. Now, the etiquette in gyms, other than this sort of dynamic of who's in there and who's looking at who, etc., which, as we've addressed, no one's really looking at anyone, but there are a couple of things that might be worth bearing in mind that could kind of raise an eyebrow in gyms. So if someone's on a machine or in a weights area and you want to use that, there's nothing wrong with really politely saying, oh, excuse me, you know, how many sets have you got left? Because I'm just trying to work out what my strategy is going to be. And they'll say, sure, yeah, I've got 2 sets left or 3 sets. Sometimes they might say, do you want to work in with me? And you might say yes, you might say no. What kind of irritates people is if you just go up and kind of assume that you can work in with them. So you just say, oh, I'm going to work in with you on this one. And they're like, oh, okay, because not everyone's comfortable with training with, you know, a person right next to them. They might not want to be like doing their exercise with you staring at them in between sets. I don't particularly like doing that. You know, I like to be getting on with my exercises myself, and gyms are pretty big. There's normally enough room in those places that people don't have to work in with you. If you invite them to, fine, but you know, that kind of annoys people a little bit. There is the sort of you know, cleanliness side of it. So we all make sweat in gyms, you know, you get a bit smelly. Obviously, I normally have a shower before I go to the gym, so I'm not stinking the place out. And then I put deodorant on before I go to the gym and a bit of spray, so I smell nice when I'm in there. As time goes on, you probably start smelling a bit minging. It happens to us all. Okay, that's fine. If you're sweating all over the equipment, wipe it down afterwards. You can normally find some paper towels, and these days especially a bit of alcohol wipe or something to mop it up with, just so other people haven't got to come and sit on your sweat that you've sort of left on a bench or something like that. There's always discussion about how much noise that you should make in gyms, whether or not you should clank things around, and I think that is kind of preferential. You know, there's going to be some gyms that are maybe more angled towards like hardcore training, and in those you're going to have to expect that people are going to kind of clank weights around a bit, because if they're really hardcore and they're doing really heavy deadlifts and stuff, they're going to be knocking those weights about a lot more than if you went into a sort of really light cardio based gym and they had a few weights in the corner. They're not going to expect you to be dropping like 500-pound deadlifts on the floor and stuff. So that's definitely a consideration. You know, take into account the type of gym you're in. I wouldn't train in a sort of yoga type Pilates studio gym that happened to have a few weights in the corner, because I know that my type of training would be completely inappropriate for that setting and it would bother other people in that setting. And the same as, you know, if you're wanting to do some of that like light cardio yoga stuff and you want a really quiet, peaceful, tranquil time, don't go to a hardcore bodybuilding gym and then complain to all the bodybuilders that they're clanking the weights around. It's a hardcore gym, they're going to be clanking weights around. So it works both ways. Horses for courses, you know, normally in places there's several gyms. That's why it always pays to go and visit the gyms, have a look in there, see if it fits your style of training. If it does, great. Like, I wouldn't go to a CrossFit gym because they're not going to even cater for the style of training I want to do. And the same as CrossFitters, you know, they're going to annoy the hell out of people in like a standardized gym if they're doing their kipping, pull-ups and jumping all around the equipment and running all around the gym when people are trying to train in like sets and reps. That's not going to be a good mixture either. So there's that to take into account. You know, train where it's designed for you to do your specific style of training. Most gyms are, you know, designed pretty much for the sort of sets, reps and a bit of cardio. That's the general sort of standard. And making noise when you lift, that's a debatable one. You know, I personally have been annoyed by some people. I don't tend to make a lot of noise when I lift because I don't think there's a need for it. Like, I breathe out really hard, I get my lift done, but I don't need to be like having an argument with the weights. I mean, why would I need to do that? I can like motivate myself to be sort of angry and aggressive and get the lifts done in my head. I don't need to actually say it out loud. And you know, you can practice that. If you think about something in your head, you can wind yourself up. You don't need to say that out loud to wind yourself up. So I don't really get where those guys are coming from. But at the same time, we're all different. Maybe that works really well for them. I just don't see it. So does it annoy me massively? No, not really. Sometimes it actually makes me laugh because I've heard people say some crazy stuff in gyms, and you know, they're obviously saying it for their own motivation or whatever, and slapping themselves around the face and stuff. And I find that fairly amusing, but that's personal preference again. Some gyms actually don't like it and they will pull you up on it. So again, that's a reason to have a look in different gyms. And if you're the sort of person who likes to shout and get yourself psyched up, then you probably want to go and train at like a big powerlifting gym, because that's standard practice at those places, or a bodybuilding gym. And if you don't like that kind of thing, then seek out a gym that's kind of got rules against that, which there are gyms that do have rules against shouting out and stuff. So that's about it for gym etiquette. I hope after that you guys have found it sort of comforting that you're not going to be like the center of everyone's attention in a gym. If you go in there and you're just in sensible mode and you're wearing normal stuff and you're getting your stuff done, no one's going to care about it. You can just crack on. There's loads of people that will give you help, and if you ask nicely, they will help you nicely. I've got no doubt about that at all. If you go in there acting crazy, or you go in there wearing a load of outrageous clothing, then sure, you're going to get some attention. Probably still won't even be negative attention, but you will get attention. So if you're the kind of person who says they don't like attention, but you do like wearing, you know, thongs and tiny tops and G-string, string back muscle vests, then, you know, probably have a think about whether you actually like attention or not, because I'm pretty sure you do if you're wearing that kind of clothing. Thanks a lot. I hope that puts your mind at ease, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.